Hi, I'm Leanne Ely. I'm a nutritionist, a New York Times best-selling author, and some people even say I'm a life coach. I started the Daily Dish Show to share my story, my truth, and my journey to vibrancy, and to inspire others to do the same. Because it's all about grit, perseverance, and finding a way despite the odds. It's about embracing the whole woman, not just the parts that are easy to love, and feeding her heart, mind, body, and soul. But I found that this isn't just my story, it's your story too. It's go time. This is the Daily Dish. Ready to get down into the misery? Do you remember that movie, Kathy Bates, Misery? And it's James Caan, I believe, and she takes her 2x4 and whacks him on the knees or foot or whatever it is, breaks his legs so he has to stay there. I could only watch so much of that before I was freaking out, just scared to death. Of course, it was a Stephen King movie, right? Of course he's going to do that to you. So I want to talk about this idea of misery and transforming misery and getting away from misery. Yesterday we talked about happiness and how happiness are the seeds for joy. So we can up-level our lives, so we can live lives on purpose, determined to have vibrancy all around us, vibrancy in everything that we do. Because vibrancy does, I mean, when you think of the word vibrancy, do you not smile? I do. I smile my face off, as a matter of fact. It's one of my favorite words because it just so completely underscores absolutely everything that we're talking about. It's all that level up. And that is why I want to talk about this. I think it's so important because there is this whole factor of folks who are literally addicted to misery. Now, I didn't believe this, but I did some research and I found that there is such a thing as being addicted to misery. Now, just for your, edification, not that you want this, what is misery exactly? Well, this is what the dictionary says. The state of being wretchedly unhappy, wretchedly unhappy, or pitifully small or inadequate. What is that? Pitifully small or inadequate, or the state of being wretchedly unhappy and uncomfortable. I don't know about you, but that just makes me gag because misery sounds like something that nobody wants. But here's the thing that we need to know. Sometimes misery is something that we have in our lives because that was modeled by a parent. That was their whole plumb line for life, is this whole idea of living in misery, constant conflict, constant drama, constant nothing's ever good enough. Exhausting, right? But and they were excessively disciplined you because you didn't live it perfectly. God help you if you got an A- on your report card. I knew somebody like that. Straight A student, got an A- and the parents flipped out. Why couldn't this been an A? Can you imagine? Set unrealistic expectations. There are parents that do that. Don't be that kind of parent. But Jennifer says misery likes company. And that is the truth. Misery is always looking for other collaborators too, by the way. Misery does that because, the more we can get in, the more people we can make unhappy. And it has that, opposite effect of the magnetism of vibrancy. It has the opposite effect, but it also connects as well. And when we are looking for evidence to support the life that we want to lead, if misery is our, true north and guiding star, we're going to find misery to prove us right. Sadly. But that isn't what you want. I know that isn't what you want. That isn't what I want. That isn't why you're here. So that's why we're going to be talking about how to not wallow in misery. And as a matter of fact, how to not to be one of those people. And by the way, I'm going to show you something else with this. That this is a way of life. This is how life is lived, through a miserable lens. Well, if you see things through a rose-colored glasses, you've heard that before, which means sunny and optimistic and everything's pink and peachy. What does a person who lives in misery see? Everything through black-colored glasses? Everything just morbid and awful and, I mean, just sad, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what color glasses misery has, but I just do know this, that it's not pretty. It's not rose-colored, and it's painful and it's hurtful. But misery can form your brain. Did you know that? Especially in your younger years. And it's the way that you view your life. So there are those who get comfortable in their misery, and that becomes their normal. And that's the thing that you don't want. I mean, who wants that for normal? And what they'll say as their excuse is, well, I'm being realistic here. Have you heard that before? I'm miserable, but I'm being realistic. You know, I'm being practical because I'm focusing on the what ifs, not the good stuff, but all that negative stuff. And the other thing is that a lot of the times these people are, the reason why they're so miserable is they're consumed by guilt. They're consumed by regret. They're consumed by a bad decision that they made way back when, and it haunts them. And they don't believe that anything is overcomable, that they're stuck. So what do? Living a life in misery, they're punishing themselves and everyone around them. Fun? I don't think so. So there's also those people too, and part of their whole misery thing is that they want to take on everyone else's problems, and they want to hold on to and dwell and individualize almost everybody else's misery. Just bring it on. I'll take it all on. We see this on Facebook a lot, don't we? We see it on Facebook because what they do is they find somebody who wants to have a fight with them. And then they want to duke it out back and forth and spend a lot of time doing this. So they can be miserable, prove their point, be right, you know, the whole bit. And just essentially be miserable. But, you know, they like it. It's the problem. They like it. Think about it this way. To me, these are like the same kind of folks who they like bungee jumping and, you know, jumping out of perfectly good airplanes and even horror movies. It's fun to be scared. It's fun to be miserable. It's fun to go to that place. Why is my only thing? Because this absolutely disturbs your whole body's chemistry. Did you know that? It ruins everything. So we need to go to the place of correction. We need to go to the place of saying, you know what, that just sounds awful. And that's not where I want to live. Where I want to live is in the place of creating my own wonderful, vibrant life. Vibrancy and misery don't live on the same block. They just don't. So the kicker, though, to all of this stuff, and that what we find with these kind of people who are being realistic and taking on everybody else's stuff, is that there's an actual addiction. Did you know this? To misery. Addicted. Like food, like drugs, like booze, like cigarettes. Misery is an addiction. So, you know, we gotta take a look at it. They take on the victim role. They take on raining on everybody else's parade. They yab at you to death. They one up you. You know the folks I'm talking about, right? It just, what happens is you'll see that there's and even when things are going well in their lives, they're looking for the next shoe to fall, and they'll even say that. Even when things are going well, and there's no resiliency whatsoever in their life. They can't bounce back, and every time something is just a hair out of line, oh my gosh, you know, everything's going to fall apart. And, you know, usually these people they don't have time for self-care. They don't have time for all these things because they're all so put upon and oh me, oh my. And you know what? When you can't feel beyond your feelings, if you can't get behind that, if you can't get behind the dissatisfaction of what life will occasionally, you know, send your way, because we always get something like that, and that when that becomes like your dwelling place, that's what you get in return. That's the evidence that you're seeking, believe it or not. That's what your brain is looking for. Show me some more misery. You know, it's like being on a game show. Give me more. Drop the balls or send the confetti, whatever it is. But this is what we're doing. And that puts us in a place of being powerless. Not only powerless, but we are choosing pathetic over powerful. Can you imagine? So these are extreme, of course, and most of us aren't like that. But misery might love company, but you're not. You're going to be powerless if you decide that this is what you want, and you're also going to attract in more of the same. So what we need to do is we need to align ourselves up differently. We need to align ourselves up with the things that we want, not this misery. The misery that we're talking about is something that can be a condition. Whereas when you're choosing happiness, you're seeding for joy. You're seeding for joy. And when we seed for joy, we can start to be a little bit more sunny. We can start to be a little bit more optimistic. We can start to see possibilities over the impossibilities that a lot of us get into and get addicted to. It's just a real cycle because, you know, we have serotonin and dopamine and all these other feel-good kind of hormones going on. But when we don't, and we're without that, we just feed this negative endless cycle and go down and down and down. Julie says, I think I'm a little like this, but don't do it to hurt others. It can be a lonely place. But Julie, you can also make a completely different decision to not do this anymore because you recognize that it is a lonely place and you don't want to hurt others, even if you do, you know, inadvertently. So we are members of a great big huge human race, and I believe we all have a responsibility to play nice in the playground, to play nice in the sandbox, and to be kind and to offer happiness and to offer a sunny disposition to those around us, because what we do and how we are affects others. We are not in alignment with God either, I'm sorry to say, but we just can't be. Because we're basically saying, whatever blessings you give me, I just don't even want to look at. We're also pushing off all the goodness that comes our way. We're always saying that it's not enough, and we're always saying that we're looking for perfection when we know darn well we're not going to see it this side of glory. Excellence doesn't even come into the vocabulary. And why am I saying all of this stuff? To wake you up if you need waking up on this. You can be a planter of seeds of happiness if you choose. You can be looking for joy. You can be seeking the joy makers in your life. There are tons of joy makers. Just sitting for a moment and looking out in nature and being thankful that you have the ability to look out of your window and to see the gloriousness that's in your backyard or your neighborhood or whatever. We have the ability to do anything that we want to move the needle into our direction, not away from us, not getting into that place of loneliness, not pushing away God, not pushing away people, not pushing away relationships, because this is what happens when we're in this life and this lifestyle of misery. It's really that distinct, and it's really that harmful. So we can align our spine, right? We can align our spine with the things that we want all the time. We can get beyond misery when we understand that it's a constraint and it's not one that we choose. We do not have to volunteer our wrists and say, go ahead, sign me up for that, and put the shackles on. We don't have to. At any time, we can realize and recognize, you know what, this has become a really bad habit. I'm kind of addicted to it. I don't need to do this anymore. I want to live my life differently. What do I do? Well, that's what we're going to talk about right now. So number one, here's your alignment assignment. You ready? When you don't want to do it, you do it anyway, no matter what it is, the hard thing. Say something nice. Stop thinking about it. Stop doing whatever it is that causes more misery. Figure it all out. We have this whole thing. This is one of my favorite tools ever. You see this? It's a piece of yellow paper. You put a line down the middle. On one side, you put down all the things that you've got that you don't want. And then on the other side, you write out your solution. Because when you're focused on solution instead of focused on misery and focused on all this other kind of, all the garbage that you don't want, you can now start to see things from a very different perspective. And that's how you build. That's how you create the life that you want to lead and leave all this stuff behind. So number two is, so you're doing it anyway because the studies show us that when we do anyway, we can uncheck the misery box doing it this way because we've made a decision to turn our back on this stuff. I love this stuff. Don't you love this stuff? That we have that much power? Did you know you had that much power? You do. And then number 2 is that you got to see the situation and the circumstances. You got to see it. But that does not mean you have to emotionally invest in it. I don't know, did your head just explode there? Mine sure did. When I was thinking about this morning, I thought about when things got me to the place of living in this and wallowing in misery was because I made the choice to invest in it emotionally. When we invest emotionally into the misery, instead of being analytical and taking a step back and saying, okay, what's going on here? When we invest in it emotionally, then we eat it up, don't we? It's like being on this smorgasbord of misery. It's like I'll have a second helping of complaining, and I'll have some of this whining over here. Oh, and that looks good. Can I get a little bit of misery? I'd like a double scoop of misery with a cherry on top. When we do all of that, do you see what happens with that? We get so wrapped up, sucked out, and we feel dry, emotionally spent, nothing left, and we feel like just basically caricatures of ourselves. And that's why I'm talking about this, because this is what the habit of being miserable does. And then we get addicted to it. And I'm going to say, let's unplug that. And we have the ability to do that when we look at it from an analytical point of view. Unplug 100% from this whole emotional thing, and stop investing our emotional capital in things that just bring us more of the same stuff that we don't want. Amen? So number 3 is that analytical is always going to protect your emotions. You know, we all have this emotional place inside of us. I believe it's in our beautiful self. It's what makes us who we are. But sometimes our emotions are out of whack. They're completely unbalanced. And we get triggered so easily to cry and to feel awful and all of that. But you know what? At the end of the day, if we were raised with that, if we had that as this was our model or whatever, we have the ability to know that that doesn't have to be our destiny unless we choose it. And even though Gwen just said, what if you had a mom like that? Okay, yeah, I had a mom who was somewhat like that. She wasn't miserable all the time, but she never, I don't think she ever had the ability to let down and just love everything the way it was without having a yeah but in there. Or if it wasn't perfect, to saying, oh, you know, something's always wrong. I never, every time I remember giving her anything or telling her about something, there was always some kind of gray shadow that had to come along with it. She couldn't just enjoy it and embrace it and say, this is fantastic. You know, there was always something that she had to throw in there. It was just the way she was. And it used to really bother me. But you know what? What saved my bacon was what I just said, is unplugging from the emotional investment. Yeah, Linda says some people are joyless. It's so true, because they're too busy working on their misery. You know, they're too busy on that. There's a lot of work there. There's a lot of emotional capital that goes into that. And what I'm saying is, when we unplug and we make a decision that we are not going to invest emotional capital into the misery and play that game, it's like we've decided not to take a seat at the table. That's it. We've not made a seat at the table, and whether it's somebody else's or even ours, we have that decision to make every single time misery starts to play its hand. But I also say to you that, you know, this other point, number 3, is analytical protects your emotions, because opportunity to put them into proper perspective gives you that minute that you need. Because here's the thing. We should never deny our emotions. We should never say, that's it, I don't want it, you know, and I'm going to pretend that this never happened. I'm never going to tell you that. But what I will tell you is, if you decide to play with it, then you've got to play by misery's rules. You got that? If you decide to play in the misery department, decide to play in misery's sandbox, then you have to play by misery's rules. And I'm saying to you that you don't need to do that unless you decide to do that. So you can protect your emotional state simply by saying, okay, I feel X, Y, and Z. However, I choose A, B, and C. Do you see the difference in that? That's not denying the way you feel. It's simply saying, despite that, I'm going to choose differently. And I'll process these emotions later, and I'll process them with a counselor or whatever. I will deal with them. But right now, this is what I'm going to choose. This gives us that window of opportunity to start flipping some things that definitely need to go on the pancake diet, right? Gotta flip them. Gotta flip them out. Number 4 is expect good things. Remember something. Your brain is your personal computer. And whatever you put out there is always going to be looking for evidence to support those things. So if your negativity and your misery is going to find other negativity and other misery. Misery loves company, right? We know that. However, when you're putting it out there, it's something different, and you're purposely changing gears. You're purposely downshifting into the emotional state that you want. Then you're going to start getting that back in return, and evidence will come in to support that very thing that you want. This is powerful stuff. And especially if you're just sick and tired of it. You know, one of the things that Gwen said is, what about your, miserable mom or whatever? Why do we need to, at this stage in our lives, live by their anthem for life? Why do we need to do that? So we know that about our moms. We know that about our history. We know that about what's happening, and I've shared those things with you about my mom before, but that doesn't mean that it needs to direct the way you do life. No, it doesn't. It just means that now you have something to maybe even put a contrast with. Well, I could do it this way, but I know for a fact that's not going to work, so I'm going to do it this way. And that's going to take a little work, but it's worth it. Number 5 is life is always working on your behalf. Do you see this? Life is always working on your behalf. And when you see this, when you see that life is always working for your behalf and you're expecting that, you're going to get it. Life is working on your behalf. Life is giving you all kinds of opportunity. And every single day, God is reminding you who He is when you see the sunrise. Every single day, there's somebody who's reaching out to you and saying something beautiful, if you're listening. Every single day, you can collect the evidence that's going to support the exact life that you want to lead. It's that simple. So the other thing, I was interesting, I had a minute, I didn't do a deep dive, but I had a minute to check out, because my L-glutamine has so worked for people with cravings and breaking addictions, from cigarettes to booze to drugs to food addictions to carbs and sugar and whatever. And I thought, would it work for this kind of negativity? And there's preliminary studies that are showing that it will help to break that cycle. Can you imagine? So try your L-glutamine. I have this right here, and I'll show you right now how to use it. Clean finger, put it on there. Teeth, tongue, gums. And I want you to think, as you're doing this, start thinking about all the positive things. So remember I told you this piece of paper? On one side, put all that negative crap, just one word emotion, all of it. On the other side, start putting all the things that flip that thinking, the pancake diet. That's what I call it, the pancake diet. When you've got all this negativity and you got to flip it over to the positivity side of things, how do you do that? You do it with how you think. You do it with how you train your brain. And one of the things that we have with us, can you imagine a supplement helping you out with that? Well, it does. And that's what the studies are showing. So grab your L-glutamine right now. Use it like this. Just put it on your desk, like so. Have it out. And when you start thinking like that, teeth and gums, teeth and gums, teeth and gums. You might kind of OD a little bit on it first thing if it's really a bad habit, but you know exactly what to do. This is how we start to get rid of the drama in our lives. This is how we start to align ourselves with excellence instead of perfectionism. And this is when we start to feel like all is well in our lives. It's not perfect, but it's certainly excellent, and it's getting better by the day. So remember, misery might love company, but I'm going to tell you what, so does excellence. And I'm going to tell you what else. When you are striving and trying to do the right thing, and when you see this stuff come up, you have all the tools at your disposal to build life and to build the bridge that you need to get to the other side, to vibrancy. Where you are now is not indicative of where you're going to go if you don't choose it to be. Don't be stuck. Just take a look at that and say, I'm not stuck anymore. No, I'm not stuck. I'm looking for possibilities, because the possibilities are going to show me what's available for me in this life that I want to lead, this vibrant life that I want to lead. And I'm going to tell you right now that this is why our workshop on January 2nd is going to be so transformative. So transformative. You're going to be able to create a system that's just and customized for you, because you're going to be the one creating it. I'm just going to give you the tools. We are going to collaborate together and create this for you in 2021. I don't want anybody to ever feel like they're overwhelmed or just drowning in this sorrow and this sea of misery. It just doesn't have to be like that. But the first thing you need to do is make a choice. And then the second thing you need to do is say that choice is not just something that you believe in, but it is a decision, and it's final. And your decision is that you have a life in front of you that's purposeful, that's meaningful, that's mission-driven, and that's going to get you from here to there. And not only that, you're going to take a whole lot of people with you on a whole different path. That's the kind of power that you own, right in your, even in your pinky. I want you to see that. So you can be powerful, you can be pitiful, but you can't be both. So make a choice of what you're going to do. Make that choice today and make a decision for yourself to go forward, to leave misery way behind, and to go forth and to create the joyful, vibrant life that you want. Little seeds of happiness being planted all along the way and bringing all of your people together. Norma says pinkies up, so do I. This is how we're going to live our lives. This is it. Thank you for joining me today. You can find me on TikTok for daily tips to help support your most vibrant life. And remember, you are the author of your own story. Until next time.